Hi, welcome to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. This is the podcast for people who want to start and grow an online location-independent business so they can live a life of freedom and choice on their own terms. Welcome to episode 32 of Your Business, Your Rules. Today's episode is called The Essential Habits of Six-Figure Bloggers, Secrets of 17 Successful Bloggers You Can Use to Build a Six-Figure Online Business. So that's not Sally's only book. She's written 7 other books and she's also a coach. So Sally, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
It's wonderful to have you here. So I'd love to hear, first of all, a little bit more about your business and this particular book, which, in case you haven't guessed already for the podcast listeners, I contributed a little chapter to this book.
You did, and thank you so much. The contributors were amazing, and this book wouldn't exist without you and the other 16 people who helped. So thank you, Kat. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I guess really short, just rewind about what I do. I've kind of been in this online business world for 5-6 years, but I've been looking for my purpose, I suppose. I have pivoted my business more times than I care to admit and what I was doing, I was always looking for that thing that I loved, that I could make money from, but I really enjoyed doing and just fitted me in who I am. And so after sort of moving through different directions 2 years ago, actually almost 3 years ago, almost on a whim, I wrote my first book. And at that time, it was going to be partly a marketing tool and partly just to see if I could, because self-publishing was beginning to become so big. I wanted to see if I could. And to my amazement, that book did well. But it wasn't just that. It was something I really enjoyed doing. I'm one of these people who loves going deep into a project. And so that started me on the sort of author part of my business. And then fast forward to The Essential Habits of Six-Figure Bloggers. That book was born out of my fascination with one question. And that was, this idea of success. We all know in the online business world, right, that if we're honest, a lot of people are trying, whether it's to start a blog or to start online business or to become a coach, but so many people are struggling. And we read these stories of these sort of 6-figure, 7-figure online business people. You think, how do they do it? So I became obsessed with this question and I started researching it. And that was where the book came from. And so I reached out to 17 people and they were all 6-figure or even 7-figure businesses, a couple of them, and asked them a series of questions. And out of that came this whole framework of sort of success, I guess you could call it, which I could see each of these people were exhibiting and kind of got exciting. And I thought, right, this is definitely my next book.
Wonderful. And you're right. Like there's definitely, there's so much information out there. There's also, and you mentioned in the book, the fact that everybody does seem to take a different path. So how do you unpack that, right? Yeah, so could you share a little bit more about these 17 successful bloggers? Are they all bloggers, some business owners? Like, is there a range in there so people get an understanding of where the framework comes from?
Yeah, sure. No, that's really important. So as part of this, I wanted to make sure I had a complete representation. Well, I guess complete is a bit ambitious, but, representation across the online world. So it's people who are in different niches, by which I mean, whether they're health or finance or whatever, but also very different business models. So I have some conventional bloggers and they have the kind of blog that you're familiar with, where they'll make money mostly from affiliate marketing and sponsored posts. But then I've also on the other end of the spectrum, 2 coaches, including yourself, and a couple of people who've got service-based businesses. One girl in the book, she has an agency model where she has a whole vast team of people and they deliver marketing services. Another friend of mine, Gina Hawkey, and her business is part product-based, but also service-based. So really and this is a deliberate step of mine. It tries to cover, all these different types of online business models that you can have.
Yeah, I think that's important because while I will admit I'm not a fan of all of these models because I'm coming from the perspective of what's the best chance of success, there's a lot of different ways to do this. So I think it's important to know like what's the spectrum that we're talking about. What did you discover by speaking to all of these different people with all of these different types of businesses online? I know you've created a framework from that. But I'd also be curious to hear if there are any major surprises, like if it turned out how you expected or if it was really new information that you hadn't found elsewhere.
So a little bit of both as far as that second question about was it what I expected or was I surprised? So to be completely candid, going into this, I had a little idea of a framework of success. I'm a coach and I've also, like many of us, I've studied and I've read and I knew from my own experiences and my client experiences, I had an idea of what I thought this, framework or what habits would come up. So I thought strategy was going to come up and I was pretty sure mindset would. But what surprised me, I guess, most was, well, two things. One was how, we've already touched on this, but how very different everybody's business models were. Yet, even though their business models were different, they did all practice or do all practice these three things. And I call them the three habits of success. So two of them I sort of hinted at. So the first one I hinted at earlier when I mentioned strategy. And I call this act with purpose, which my definition is successful people have a mission and take strategic action to fulfill their vision. And I kind of expected strategy to come up because you can't really start an online business without some proven strategy, some proven process or approach. But one of the surprises there was just the variety of approaches that can work and do work, because all of these people did have six-figure businesses or more, and they were doing all of them are doing work that they really loved as well. So that was the first habit, act with purpose. And then the second one was something that shouldn't have surprised me, but it came up so often. And I hadn't even thought of this, which is I call it create systems for success. Now, my background is as a systems analyst or a business analyst long before the online world when I was in corporate. So I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but every single person I spoke to has some form of systems. And this doesn't have to be complex. Even if you're beginning an online business, this can be as simple as your morning rituals, or it can be automation, or it can be outsourcing. It can be almost anything. But the whole idea of these systems was, or is to make sure those essential tasks always get done. We know that in online business, or when you're working for yourself for that matter, it can just be difficult to keep on going. There are times when you just want to give up, and creating these systems for success is what everybody I spoke to when I asked the question, what helps you keep going? When you hit obstacles, how do you keep going? And systems are a big part of that, just having that understanding. These are the essential tasks and they've got to get done. And then the third one is the mindset piece that I hinted at earlier. And I call this believe in yourself. And I would say, this is probably the one that's most critical, in that I think it's the one that differentiates the people who really, really succeed from those who don't. And believe in yourself is all about just accepting responsibility for your results and believing that you can achieve the outcome you want, no matter what. And this is the part where I think when the obstacles come up, whether that's the fear, I remember in your interview, Kat, you mentioned the fear and just being your own, I think you said something like, I was my own biggest obstacle early on. And I think this is true for everyone. So I think number 3, the believe in yourself habit is just so critical to success.
Absolutely. I'm so on board with this, and it's really interesting because I heard about this from the very beginning of my business journey. I heard how important mindset is, but I was somehow just not taking this on board or not really understanding what it meant. And I think that the longer you are in business, the more you really, really start to see how your beliefs about yourself are affecting every single thing that you did. And I think you can get to a certain point by doing the first two, as you said, like having a goal and working towards it. And that was my approach in the beginning, that I had a goal. It was really important to me. I'm good at implementation, so I knew how to get things done. And that was my strategy. Just keep powering on towards the thing that I want. And in my journey, I really found that it only works for a certain period of time. You have to mentally level up and work on whatever the things are so that you can move forward. And one of the ladies that contributed said something along the lines of, if you keep implementing and keep working on your mindset, then you actually get to outrun the resistance. I thought that was really powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that because I've experienced it. And sometimes you need to outrun that resistance, or else it's going to come up so big and so ugly that I've seen it over and again, right? You just stop in your tracks. So yeah, it's so critical, this piece.
Yeah. So how would you recommend that people approach this? Because I know you've got lots of different ideas in the book taken from these 17 people of how to approach each of the 3 habits so that it works for you.
Okay, yeah, good question. So act with purpose. This one is all about setting a meaningful goal. And actually, back to one of your earlier questions too, about one of the things that surprised me, but also pleased me, because I'd been on a personal journey of kind of finding work that was purposeful to me. So one way I'd recommend people exhibit this habit is setting goals. But we all know about goal setting strategies. But what really impressed me about all of the people I interviewed is how they had goals that were meaningful to them. So this means really digging deep into who you are and getting to know what's important to you, your values, your experiences, and what it is that shaped you in your past. And then helping that form like your big goal for your business. So you have a goal that you're connected to. And I noticed that in everyone I spoke to, just how in the early days, they might have had a goal to earn 5 figures in their business and then earn 6 figures in their business. But at some point, they all said that stopped being enough. They needed to have a goal that meant they were making an impact or a change in their world. So that would be my kind of first advice with Act with Purpose. And then systems for success. There are so many different systems here, but I'd love to pull one out that came up, I was going to say 3 or 4 different times, which is great sort of system or strategy or tool to use, whether you're a beginner or whether you're a 6 or onto your way of becoming a 7-figure business. And that is the idea of batching. I was really surprised at how often this was mentioned, but it's something I personally do myself again. And the idea of batching your tasks, it's really practical. It's to do with putting aside 1 or 2 hours a day to do related tasks. So you might say, I'm going to do all my writing on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings, for example. And, you know, there's studies on this, research on this, that shows that's how you're going to be. It increases your productivity and increases your focus. And I mean, there are many, many other systems for success. But what I'd really like to talk about is the third habit, because I think, like we said earlier, this one is what can be a game changer for people. And it's the mindset piece, believe in yourself. And the thing that I'm going to stick my neck out here and say everybody mentioned to me as the most important sort of tool or strategy they used to master mindset is surrounding themselves with the right people. This is just so important. And each individual, they do this in different ways. If you're just starting out, this can be joining communities online or Facebook groups. And when you're getting at a higher level in your business, it's joining masterminds or having coaches. Or, I mean, many of the people I spoke to do several of these things, but it's surrounding yourself by the kind of people who are going to lift you up and are going to believe in your dream and they're going to support your dream. And it's got to, you don't want those naysayers in your life, the people are going to drag you down, because as we mentioned, you have enough obstacles and stories inside your own head that you don't need them from the external world. But the best tool I could say to anyone is surround yourself by the kind of people who are going to support you on your journey.
Absolutely. I'd so agree with that. And it's interesting that you pointed out how people are doing it in different ways. I hadn't considered that myself. But yeah, I'm in a mastermind, as you said. And if I think about my own journey when I was in the very beginning, and I think this is the time when people are the most sensitive to external influence. My strategy at that point was to just not tell anyone who I thought would make fun of it, have a negative opinion, tell me I couldn't do it. And there would have been plenty of those people, even within people, the group of people that I liked and trusted. Just because I was coming from a completely different area. So because I came from the IT world, people in IT generally have a disdain for marketing, and I was moving to the other camp. So people were going to have an opinion about that. And I think, yeah, it's so important. If I was hearing every day, oh, well, that's never going to work. Why do you think you can do that? That's ridiculous. I wouldn't have been able to start. So my way of doing that was completely shielding myself from people who were going to tell me that, and then only coming back to those people when I had clear evidence that it was working. And, at that point, they had nothing to say.
Right. That's interesting. Can I ask you to now, as you were talking, are you okay with sharing with those people what it is you do now?
Yes. So everybody knows what I do now, that there's no secret around it. But my situation was kind of convenient, as in I moved to the other side of the world. So I wasn't bumping into people from my old life all the time. So it was made very easy to create that separation. I don't think that separation is easy necessarily for everyone to create. But I needed a buffer between me and the rest of the world so I didn't have to figure it out in public.
Right.
I think it can be really helpful for people in the beginning, kind of adding on from what you've said, to discuss what they're doing with the right people. And if they have other people in their lives that may not be for this, maybe they're not the right people to talk to. As an example, one of my clients who just graduated from one of my programs, I just did a case study with her this week, and she told me that her parents said it was a ridiculous idea for her to join my program.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was so interesting, right? And then she says, in retrospect, it was one of the two best decisions she ever made in her life. Number one was making the decision to study abroad, and number two was to do this program. So, they were just the wrong people to ask, because they did not understand what she was trying to do and had no knowledge about the subject. And business is definitely one of those subjects that everybody has an opinion on, no matter what level of knowledge that they have.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And I hear it all the time from people who reach out to me, asking me, whether by email, someone's read my books, or a client. Exactly that is, how do I deal with, it could be their spouse, their parent, they don't understand what I'm doing. And I always say, go find your people, your tribe, even if it's a virtual tribe, an online tribe, you just understand what you're doing. It's so critical to success.
Absolutely. So good. All right. So how do we get our hands on this book?
Well, it's on Amazon, and you can get it in both Kindle format, ebook, and print version. And you can also go to my website, bloggerhabits.com, and you'll find links on there to the book on Amazon.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's a It's a really exciting project because it's an industry with a lot of hype. It's an industry with a lot of people making money from different strategies and tactics. So there's a lot of people pushing individual tactics. And I really love what you've done of taking like a snapshot of almost as broad as we can make the industry that we would call blogging or online business, and just look at what are people doing and how are they making this successful. So I'm sure it's going to be a very successful project of yours.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited for this book and to get it into as many people's hands as possible.
Wonderful. So do go over to Amazon or to bloggerhabits.com and get your copy. And Sally, where do we find you and your personal website as well?
Sure. You can find my website at sallyannmiller.com, and you can find out about my other books there. And I also blog weekly about working from home, doing what you love.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. If you like this show, I'd love you to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, head over to my website at katleblanc.com. Until next time.